Hello, my name is Dylan, but you can call me Buttercup. Welcome to Buttercup Yarn Art, a soft-spoken video journal where I play with yarn and share my thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you'd like to see more, please subscribe. If there's anything you'd like to hear me talk about, please leave a comment to let me know. The pattern I am working on today is still the sorrel sweater from Wool & Pine. I have finished the yoke and separated the sleeves and body. I am taking a break from the body. I'm at the end of a skein here, and I am going to be finishing the sleeves first. So I have a limited yarn supply for this project, and I would rather have the sleeves be full length and the body be a little bit shorter than the other way around, which is why I am doing the sleeves first, to make sure they are able to be as long as I would prefer them to be. The first thing I want to talk about today is something that I call Project Portability, which is pretty much what it says on the tin. It's how easy it is for me to bring a project with me when I'm going somewhere, if I'm going to be sitting and waiting for a while, or if I'm mainly going to be listening and I don't really need to be looking, that kind of thing. And I like to be able to have, just something to do in those kinds of situations. And some projects are better for that than others. So the sorrel sweater, especially now, is pretty portable. If during the yoke I was somewhere where the rows were pretty plain, and it wasn't one of the increase rounds, anything like that, it was pretty easy to bring somewhere if I didn't need to be working on it for very long, kind of thing. Now that the yoke is finished, it's actually much more portable because it is pretty much endless stockinette, which is very easy to bring places to work on. Sleeves are a little bit annoying, though, to be fair. Come on. I'm not the biggest fan of Magic Loop, but I don't have DPMs in non-sock sizes, unfortunately. So, I had a job at one point where I had a lot of downtime. And I had pretty free reign to do whatever I wanted with that downtime. So I would bring my knitting with me to work on while I was, waiting for things to happen, waiting for something to do. There were also long periods where I was the only one in the area and I could play music or movies pretty quietly, to have something to listen to. It was pretty nice. but I would have projects for that which were even a step simpler than portable. They were mindless or nearly mindless. So plain socks, simple shawls, that kind of thing, you know. And those would be projects that I could just look at and know what I was supposed to do next. You know, I could read the stitches very easily, and there wasn't anything really complicated that I had to think about to make it work. And it was, you know, there were also projects that I was working on at the same time that I kept for home only because they were too complicated and I had to be focusing on them. And I needed to be able to shift focus very quickly at this job if something was happening, so they were no good for bringing with me for downtime. And, you know, mindless projects or minimally mindful projects are typically very good for portability. Kind of lost my train of thought. I think I was done with what I was saying just then. That's fine. And one of the things that helps with portability, and is actually the second thing that I would like to talk about today, which is the ability to memorize patterns. So, you know, mindless or minimally mindful patterns are typically patterns with really easily memorized repeats. So, you know, something like the flax sweater, for instance, you know, particularly the yoke and the sleeves. The garter panels are alternating, and the alternation in the yoke lines up with the raglan increases and the wrist rows. So it's a very easy pattern to memorize, and you know, if I can also remember the counts that I'm aiming for, or even just how many increases I need to do, I can just pause and count every so often, wherever I am, and make sure I'm on track. And it was really, really good for that. The sorrel sweater, on the other hand, the yoke is not as easy to do that with. The increases are unevenly spaced, and I don't know if this is a thing with circular yokes that I just don't have as much experience with, because this is the first circular yoke I'm ever doing, or if it's particular to the sorrel sweater, but the increases are unevenly placed, and you know, it was difficult for me to get a feel for when they were supposed to be. So for the sorrel sweater during the yoke, for most of the rows I would be looking at the pattern to make sure I was, doing what I was supposed to be doing. And I would make sure that when I was making a video, for example, I would be on a round that didn't involve increases or wasn't near an increase. So, I would contrive it so that if I had to be somewhere or if I was going to be filming, I wasn't on or just before an increase round, just to make sure that I, wasn't messing up the pattern. Now that the yoke is over, I don't have to memorize anything because it's just endless stockinette, which is really lovely. It's also easier with a pattern I don't have to think about to have something that I'm watching while I work on it. Right now I am trying to binge catch up on Critical Role because, as I understand it, Campaign 2 is about to come to an end, and I would very much like to try to catch up. Because I would like to watch the end of the campaign live if I can. I'm not sure exactly when the end is going to be because I'm quite a bit behind. But, it's easier to watch when I'm not doing something that requires all of my attention. I have it playing right now. That might be why I keep losing my train of thought today, because I keep getting distracted by Critical Role. And if I was trying to work on something more complicated, I might mess it up a bit. So, I think that's everything I actually wanted to talk about. But fun fact, these are the topics that I wanted to talk about last week, but which a comedy of errors prevented me from posting a video about. Prevented me from posting a video about because the video I posted, in which I originally talked about it, had no audio. And I had a bit of a comedy of errors again today. And this video is going up a bit later than I normally like to put up videos. But I didn't want to put up nothing, because the week that I put up nothing will be the week that I stop posting altogether, and I don't want to do that. So, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.